Okay. Hey, everyone. How is everyone doing? If you guys are still feeling energized about this summit, definitely let us know here in the chat. I have a very in-depth conversation with my friend, Miss Teri Ijeoma. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Andre Albritton. I'm the founder of the Millennials Next Door. And there, I keep it simple. Y'all just like to talk about money and investing. And Teri, to go ahead and get us started, would you mind letting the crowd know a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Teri Ijeoma. I am a day and swing trader. I'm a $1 million trader. And I also teach people how to trade in a course called Trade and Travel. And it all started because I was an assistant principal of an elementary school and I needed an exit strategy. I was ready to quit. So I gave myself a year to really learn how to invest. I altogether have been investing for 11 years now, but now in that year, when I was an assistant principal, I was like, look, there's got to be something else to this life. So started trading till I could make $300 a day to replace my income and left and started traveling all around the world. Was in Thailand, Vietnam, Australia, Israel, just everywhere trading stocks. And then that's when people started asking me to teach them how to trade.
And just to let the crowd know, Teri is still traveling. She was in Atlanta. What you said, just yesterday or a few days?
Yes, I just got into Miami today. And I live in Texas, y'all. So this is not even like home. This is just, I needed some water. So where can I find water in the States without a COVID test?
No, that's amazing. So, I definitely want to ask one of the main questions. You talked about some of your struggles as far as, dealing with the whole principal thing. Was it that the sole purpose of what inspired you to start trading and traveling?
It was that. And also one of my friends passed away. So I had a friend, John, who was like my ace cum boon in Chicago. Like we had a crew and our crew did everything together. And one day I was on my way to work and getting all these texts from my crew. I don't know. Do you have a group text message, Andre? Like with all your friends on it, right? So I had one of those and all of a sudden it was just blowing up at 6 a.m. in the morning on my way to work and John had passed away. And at this same time, I had gone into the school and was having to pretend like nothing happened because I hated it, but I didn't want any of them to know that I wasn't having a good day because I was already struggling to put this face on every day and be in that building. So for me, I knew like life is too short. Something's got to give. And that was when I started praying and just journaled to the Lord. Lord, if I could do anything, what would it be? And for me, it was, I love to travel and I love trading. Like it was a hobby at the time, but I really enjoy it. So that's where it came from.
And what was the big changes that you did in your regular life as far as, where you take this hobby into your main source of income?
Well, one, I started practicing every day. I think that's a big thing. Like if you're really going to try to make income from trading. So I guess for those on the call, the difference between like a longer term investor and a trader is we're actually actively investing for income. We may be trading the same stocks. So I'm still trading good, technically sound, fundamentally sound, healthy companies that other people would be holding forever. I'm just trading in and out of those positions. So for me, it's something where you have to start trading every day. I started taking lots of classes so that I could really hone my craft. For anybody who's thinking about being an active investor, I don't think this is something you have to do on your own. Like there's this like, oh, I can figure this out. Let me look at YouTube. No, like we've been doing this. I've been trading 11 years. People before me have been trading 30 years. The market's been around a while. We got some skills and bruises that we can help you miss out on, right? So I definitely think it's important to start taking classes and then practicing.
All right. And you mentioned the practicing aspect. So what did practice look like for you? We're talking about like paper trading, or you like just doing small amounts here and there?
So for me, I started with my old 401ks. So in my last jobs, I had mainly been in education and nonprofit. So it's really 403Bs, but they had all given me a match. So I had made sure to invest all the way up to my company's match in those accounts. And it had led up to about 20 to 30,000 in that account. So really it was around 30,000, a little less sometimes, a little more. And I moved that money over and started practicing in a self-directed IRA. So that's where I first started practicing with my retirement account. And then once I quit, I moved that cash into a cash account, or that money into a cash account.
Understood. And I'm sorry, everyone. I forgot to mention for the audience, if you guys have any questions, so I'm more than free to go put them in the chat. They'll let us know, and we can definitely get those answered. And Teri, I want you to please paint this pretty picture for us, because I know for my job, I'm trying to move forward to like working from home, just working from my laptop, so I can travel to here and there. How is that for you? So I mean, you're traveling to all these different countries. You're waking up. Like, what did you actually do? I mean, like, were you trading all the time? Were you enjoying the country? What was it like?
So Andre, do you want to know back when I first started or now?
You know what? Do both. Yeah, let us know. Let us know the before and let us know now.
Okay, so back when I first started, so I quit my job in July. In the summer, my principal was like, "Oh, yay, we're getting ready for next year," and I was like, "Good for you, because I'm not coming back." That's not really how the conversation went. I was terrified, but I still said something like that. Like, no, this was a toxic work environment for me. I'm sorry, I won't be able to come back. That's went. But after that, in October, so July, a few months passed, and then in October, I just leave and start traveling 1 month at a time in different countries. I did a program called We Roam, which is kind of like there's another popular program that a lot of people know about, but it's a program where you travel for 1 month at a time in different cities. So the first place that we went was South Korea, and I got a chance to explore Seoul. And I had actually no idea where South Korea was on a map. I just knew that I was getting on a plane and going. But it was gorgeous once I got there. Like, they had all these big buildings, and the food was good, and they have Korean barbecue, just all these things I never would have imagined. Then that next month we went to Thailand. So it was in Thailand, and I would do these excursions too. So in South Korea, I also went to Japan because it was close. In Thailand, I went to several of the islands. And then that next place we went was Vietnam. And I actually taught my first trading class in Thailand. The other people I was traveling with were like, "Teri, teach us how to do this thing that you're doing. Like, we wish we didn't have to have jobs too. You're always trading on your cell phone." And so actually my first class was in Thailand in one of the co-working spaces. I said, "Fine, guys, I'll do a workshop." And I thought it would be a one-time thing. But that's what it used to look like. One of my biggest days in the beginning was I was in Greece. And I was on the beach, my friends out there in the ocean, and I'm trading on my phone. And I made $20,000 on the beach in Greece trading Chipotle. And my friend comes back, and she's like getting out the water, and she's like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And I'm like, I show her my screen, and she's like, "What?" And she said more than that. She's like, "WTF? I'm over here, having fun in the water, and you're making $20,000. But that's what life is like for me. It's fun. It is spontaneous. Like with Atlanta, I didn't have a flight booked until like 11 p.m. last night. And it was like, okay, we're going to Miami. Okay, cool, let's go. And I like being able to be spontaneous and kind of be the ruler of my life.
Now, when it comes to you trading, I mean, you're talking about being the ruler of your life. For a new trader or even an intermediate trader such as myself, what type of mindset should we actually be in to make this a reality?
Yeah. One thing is you really need a trading plan. So I just recently did a conference called Master the Trade, and I walked everybody through what is included in a trading plan. And it includes everything from like you as a person to your strategy. So the first parts of it is you got to figure out, like, when are you actually going to make time to trade? Like, are you spending a couple hours in the morning? Are you spending some time at night? But you got to make time. How long will you be trading? What type of person are you? Are you a longer term investor? Or are you a shorter term investor? What are your goals? Like, the first thing is you got to figure out who you are, and then that will dictate your strategy. So if you're someone that says, you know what, my goal is I really want to retire my mom. That's something that I did recently, last month. I retired my mom. So it was, okay, in order to retire my mom, she makes $35,000 a year. She's going to need at least 5 years worth of room to retire her before her Social Security kicks in. So I need to have at least $150,000 to retire her. And then once you have that goal, then you can start planning towards it. Okay, well, am I going to be a active day and swing trader to reach that goal? Is it going to be a longer term thing? Like, okay, in 10 years, I'll invest in this stock and let it grow. So like, basically what I'm trying to say is it's important to have a trading plan. The rules that dictate when do you get into a trade? When do you get out of a trade?
Right.
And when you have that, it's not an emotional game anymore. It's very much disciplined, patience. This is when I get into a trade. So I got to wait for those criteria to line up. If it hasn't lined up, I'm not jumping at AMC or GameStop because that's not my criteria. If it didn't line up, I'm not running after Tesla at its highs because that's not my criteria, right? So that's what you need, a trading plan and discipline to follow it.
I think that is extremely important to know. So I'll say this for everyone, when we think about investing, there are so many ways to make money in the market, so many different strategies, so many different styles. It doesn't mean that one is going to make you more money than the other. It's just trying to find the right fit for yourself, as Teri mentioned. And we're going to take a few quick questions here. So Teri, one question was, while you were still working as an assistant principal, when would you trade?
So great question. What I would do is the market opened at 8:30 a.m. So I'd make a meeting with myself for about 30 minutes around 8:30 a.m. And this is on my calendar is a meeting with myself. That 30 minutes was time for me to look at the pre-market and then make any trades in the first few minutes of the market. Then I'd go do my job, do assistant principal stuff. And then at lunchtime, I would check again. But you can trade on your cell phone. Most apps now, most brokers have apps now. So I check them at lunchtime, nothing crazy, but just doing a little check. And then at the end of the market, that's when I would spend another little meeting with myself to see, do I want to close out any trades for the day? Or do I want to open something for tomorrow? And then I would do my real work, because what many people forget is it's not always about the actual trade. It's about the planning before the trade. So that planning I would do at night. I would go through each one of my stocks when I got in bed at night. I go through each one of my stocks and I would look at their charts and I would chart where I'm getting in and out of them. And now for what I tell my students is once you do that charting, put alerts in the system. That way you don't even have to look the next day. You just, if your alert comes up, then oh, I already planned that. Let me go get into that trade. So those things I would do at night. And then I'd rinse and repeat the next day.
And for that, were you doing a lot of stop loss orders? And would you mind just explain what that even is? Because I know for me, I utilize that a lot, so I don't have to watch my trades. I can get outside a profitable point for myself. Yeah.
So like what Andre's talking about is in order to do a set it and forget it type of order, you have to be able to put in where you're entering your trade. And then you also put in where you're going to get out if it goes wrong. And that should be planned even before the trade. Yep. And that order is called a stop loss. If the stock comes down to here, I'm getting out. And then you can have your target also set in the computer. And depending on your brokers, like I use one right now called TradeStation, they let us enter both of those exits at the same time. It's called a bracket order. But depending on your broker, you can put both of those in at the same time or just have like an alert that comes up that says, okay, when it gets to this price, I'm actually going to sell. And then you can let those orders stay in the computer. It's called a good till canceled order, an order that stays in the computer, GTC. Let that stay in the computer and then you don't have to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do for a lot of my, we can say more riskier investments. So just as an example, I would invest in Egioma when it drops. And then once I start seeing going up, I say, okay, it's up at $25 recently. I'm going to put my stop price at $24. So I can at least lock in my profits at that moment. So I'm very happy that we're talking about that because I think it's very important. And the other question is just as important. How much money do people who take your class start trading with?
Yeah, so it really varies by person, but I tell them start with just $500 because I want them to put $500 in and then trade in the simulated account. Because the goal for my students is I want you to try to make 1% of your cash amount on a regular basis, whether that's daily or whenever you trade, you try to make 1%. So if you're trading with 5,000, then you're trying to make 500. If you're trading with 50. If you're trading with 10,000, you're trying to make $100. And the goal is, okay, $100 a day stacks up. That's $500 a week, $2,000 a month. And that's actually 20% return, which is huge. That's bigger than the market does in a year. Mm-hmm. So your goal is 1% of your cash amount. And then that can help you decide how much you actually want to put in. But I would say start small and trade in the simulator first. Get some consistency, be able to see how well you're doing as a trader, and then you can add more money to your account.
And speaking of returns, for your portfolio, does it mainly focus on capital gains or dividends or a mix of both?
Actually, I don't have any dividend stocks right now.
No. Oh, no, man.
No, I know. It's crazy. No REITs, no dividends. Cool. All of my stock positions are in options right now, and they are mixed between technology and then some other companies. Like I have, if you were to look at my portfolio right now, I think I have like Visa, Apple, Goldman Sachs. I looked at some things like after earnings and then said, hey, this is a good opportunity. You know, wherever the chart says get in, that's my trading strategy. I'm looking at what the chart says. Okay. But then I also did real well today in Bitcoin. So I've been diversifying in that way lately with stocks and crypto. So yeah, did really, really well in Bitcoin as it rose today. Yep. And I also have like something called a stable coin that gives interest. So that's kind of my more safer play than maybe a dividend stock is that stable coin. Okay. A stable coin is it's a crypto coin, but it's based on the US dollar. So you get interest, but you're invested in a coin, but you can always swap it out for $1.
Understood. And one other question we have here for you. What's your recommendation on trades versus long-term holds like index funds? What's an example or recommended allocation?
Okay, so I have to admit, I'm a day and swing trader, so I'm always going to be partial. Like that's my bread and butter. I love longer term traders. I think they're great, but I struggle, y'all. Like that's just not my strength. The patience to like let it sit for a year. Mm-hmm. If I had to let a stock sit for a year, I don't know what I would do with myself. So I have to admit, that's just not my stronghold. All the things I do are going to be swing trades. Now, the question would then go is, well, how much do you do day versus swing? And I would come back to the chart. So for me, I do whatever the chart says. So if the chart, I look at candlestick formations. If the chart says this is the place where banks are buying and this is the place at this price where banks are selling, if that movement from the buyer's level to the seller's level happens in a day, I'm in the trade for a day. If it takes a couple weeks, I'm in the trade a couple weeks. So it really, there you go. It really depends on what the chart says.
And I'm sorry, Teri, you said you were doing candlestick. Exactly what is that?
A candlestick it shows where the price action was in a certain period of time. So like if I'm looking at the candlestick for a day, what it'll do is it'll tell me what price did the stock open, what price did the stock close, and then where did it go throughout the day. And when you tell the story of those candles, you can actually see where big banks are placing big orders to buy or big orders to sell a stock. And we as investors know buyers move prices higher and sellers move prices lower. So that's what we're looking for in charts. I'm looking for.
That makes sense. And we also talked about a few simulations as well. So like, what are some of your favorite simulators for trading?
I'm looking at just a formation. So in trade and travel, we cover 4 formations. And those are the formations I'm always looking at. I don't have indicators. I don't have any other things that I put on it. Like those are the things that I look at.
And someone, they asked if you use options in short positions when trading. You kind of already answered it. But can you go over some of the things that you probably want to look out for a first-time option user?
Yeah, so I definitely I'm a short-term trader, even with options. So for example, like recently that day I was telling you guys about with retiring my mom. So I made $131,000 in a day. And then that next day, it actually went up to $191,000 in a day. And that was all with options. The main drivers of that were Netflix and Amazon options after Netflix earnings. And usually I don't trade earnings, but I had been in that next Netflix position since the beginning of the year. So it wasn't really just I had played it for earnings. It had come into a buyer's level around the beginning of the year. So the answer is yes, I trade short-term options. The thing you got to look out for is options are determined by time and stock movement. We call it intrinsic value. So part of it, if you're ever buying an option, whether you're buying a call or buying a put, you are really heavily relying on the stock price moving however much you want it to move. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be really important, okay? But the other thing that's going to be working against you is time. How long did you give yourself for that movement to happen? Because as it gets closer and closer to expiration, you're going to be losing value. And I think that's one thing people have to remember. If you are trading things that are really close to expiration, you're usually going to be a loser. So you want to give yourself more time till expiration for it to work out correctly.
Yes, I can definitely attest to that because I know for me during that whole GameStop saga, I got in a little bit. And don't worry, I used
I told you about that. I
used the money that I could afford to lose. So
okay.
I put like $300. I won with Nokia, lost a bit of AMC, and I still got to put option on GameStop now. So let's see what happens. But yeah, if it was all money, I would not miss at all.
But okay, if you got to put, then that's better than if you were trying to make it go up.
Right.
But I will say, like, one of the things that Andre and I had a Clubhouse meeting recently, and I talked about, like, I really would hesitate to use options in something like a GameStop play. And one of the reasons why is because options don't move overnight. And in that short squeeze, a lot of movement in the stock was happening overnight that you couldn't control. And it's really hard to have an option like that you're trying to make money on when you can't control $100 movements happening overnight. Right. So if it's something where there's a lot of movement overnight, then I encourage you guys to actually trade it with stocks. And that's okay. Don't be afraid to trade something with stocks. Andre, I'm going to just get my charger, but I'm still here.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. And just keep the conversation going. When it comes to option trading, you guys also want to make sure, one, you have to understand that it's a risk and it's a good amount of money you need to buy these contracts. So you have to pay for the contract. You also have to pay for the shares at whatever strike price you select. So just for as a reference, I'm sure Teri can attest to this, but Amazon option might be costing you well into the thousands of dollars compared to some other ones like such as Teva pharmaceutical stock. That might cost you only $100. But yeah, you definitely want to save up your money for these options trades because Teri, I've seen the prices for Apple, for Amazon, for Teslas. I couldn't afford those options if I wanted to.
Yeah. And you have to be careful as well because one thing people don't realize is your break even on an option is going to be your strike price plus how much you paid for the premium. So say, for example, you're in an Apple trade. And then Apple's actually a little bit better because their volume is so high that their spreads are a lot smaller. So Apple's usually okay. But at the same time, here's the thought. If your strike price on Apple is, okay, I want Apple to go to you have $136 strike and you had to pay $14 for it. That means that you're not going to break even on that option until the stock moves $14 above your strike. So it needs to move to $150 before you're profitable if you were to keep it to expiration. And I think sometimes people don't realize that. They just assume that, like, I can pay whatever price in an option contract and it's just going to move up for me. Yeah. And that's always the case, especially if you did a really short time frame, like your expiration is next week. If it hasn't moved the whole amount of your premium, you might be stuck. So people do have to be careful of that.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely very risky. Now, for yourself, you mentioned that you're focusing on the candlesticks. For your students, are there any, let's say, common obstacles they usually come up to?
First, like we do trade on a more robust platform. So I think the first hurdle is always, okay, getting used to trading on a more robust online brokerage. So like, yes, a lot of people like Robinhood because it's easy to use, and that's true. But when you become a more active investor, you're probably going to need more tools, more order types, more margin, just more everything. And that usually comes with a higher functioning broker online platform. So do know that's going to be the first hurdle. You'll have to open up a brokerage account and then learn something new. So that's one. The other thing I think is more the mindset. I think many of them would say the emotional part of trading. Like, how do you not have FOMO, fear of missing out, when you see a stock that you knew was going up, go up, and you weren't in it? And then, how do you not chase it? Or how do you not get greedy when you see green in your account and you're like, oh, let me wait for that $1 more.
Yeah.
It's going to turn back around on you. So I think really the next hurdle is more mental than anything. And then the discipline to follow the strategy, because I give a step-by-step strategy in the course.
Okay, that's fair. And then we talked about some of the common obstacles that some of your students will face. What separates the students from mediocre from the winners?
The ones that are really willing to put in the work. So I have one student, he's up 5,000% return in like 4 months of being in the course. And he even will tell you, like, one, I did what Teri said. I didn't try to put my own spin on it or like take a little bit of here and a little bit of there. He's like, no, I just did what Teri said. So he has the discipline to do the strategy. And then he also watched and rewatched the course and practice. So I think that determination and that grit to no matter what, I'm going to put in the time. That's what will actually really make you a good trader. And I think the ability to kind of brush yourself off when you make a mistake and get back up. We're all going to have losses. It's all going to happen to everybody, but that the winner is the one that's able to get back up and try again.
You definitely hit on a good point there, that this individual is putting in the time and work. I know for a lot of people, they might be under the influences, like, all they need is one golden stock, one trade to change their life. It's definitely not like that at all. It's truly a timely process.
It is. And guys, I want you to know that like you can be successful in trading, but more so this is a longer term game. Like learning how to trade is a skill set you're going to have for the rest of your life. So you shouldn't think that I'm going to do like a lottery, like I put in a coin, spin it, and it's over. Like, no, this is a skill set. So the real winners are going to be those that learn how to make small, consistent wins, because those stack up. Right. If you make one good trade and then you go and lose a whole bunch and the next day, then your account won't grow. But that person who's consistently making those small wins and like keeping their losses small, they're the true winner.
And one question from the audience, they ask, do you invest full in short-term and swing positions? Or do you keep a portion in long-term value or growth stocks?
I trade growth stocks, but not so much. Like, so if I trade a stock, it has to move at least $1 a day. So many like value companies don't move enough to meet my criteria. That's where that trading plan comes in of like, what stocks do you actually trade? What fits your criteria? So many of those stocks don't hit my criteria. Do I trade companies that will be around for a while? Yeah, the same companies that are in your portfolio are probably in mine. Like I've got Amazon and Google and Salesforce and Visa. Like I've got some bellwether companies that we know will be around for a good minute. But I mentioned this before. I'm not really a long-term trader, but I do have a set of 31 stocks that's my watch list. It doesn't really change that much. I know those stocks. I know them inside and out. And so those 31 are with me for life. So to that point, I guess that's long-term, but I'm still a day and swing trader.
So that's interesting. So you just focus on 31 stocks. Those are the ones you kind of know in and out, and you're just waiting for a good point based on of your strategy if you want to kind of enter into them.
Yes. Yeah. And the cool thing is that, like, I've been watching some of these stocks. Like, I've been watching Amazon since it was $199. I've been watching Apple since before 2 of its splits, you know, like I've been watching these companies for a long time, but I've just been trading in and out of them as they've risen. And there's always going to be another opportunity. I think sometimes people feel like, oh man, I missed out. It's too late.
Yeah.
And no, it's not. Like right now I'm thinking about Tilray. I'm giving y'all a little secret. I'm not telling you what to invest in, but just like Tilray at one point was $200. But if you were to have looked at it last year when it was $2, now it just made it to 30. You'd be like, dang, I really missed out. I didn't get into it when it was $2. I didn't get into it when it was $8. Guys, it has the ability to go up to 200. You still didn't miss it. So we have to really, really be careful with our mentality.
Agreed. And yeah, I did see the Tilray. I'm talking about giving a put option on it. Just because, you know, I don't have much faith in it, period. And I know Tilray, they kind of were actually involved in the short squeeze of themselves a few years back.
You said they were? Yeah, they were. That run up to 200 was a short squeeze. Yep. And then it came back down to 20. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And before we get to this other question, I'm curious, as far as when you came to these 31 stocks, what were you doing to evaluate these stocks? Like, what are some of the main questions you want answered before you even put them on your watch list?
Sure. So I definitely want to know, like, from their earnings, how is their revenue? How is their profit? So like the earnings is revenue minus expenses. So you're looking at, okay, what's their bottom line? And then I do look at kind of what are they forecasting for the future? So is it something where we know that, you know, and eventually they're going to have some new products coming out? So I'm overall looking for just healthy companies that, like I said, that I know will be around for a while.
Understood. And could you describe a healthy company?
The things I talked about: revenue positive, bottom line positive, good outlook for the future.
Okay, understood.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's go and get to this question.
Okay.
When you are thinking about leaving your job for a change, what is the criteria you recommend to know you are ready to leave and focus just on your trading income?
I think when you're hitting your goal consistently. So that $300 a day for me was replacing my assistant principal income. And I was consistently hitting that $300 a day. I even had one day where I made $3,000 in a day. And at the time, my assistant principal income was like $4,000 a month. So I was like, I almost beat my whole salary today. So when you're consistently having those kind of days, then I think you'll be a bit more ready to actually leave the job. But I do think be prepared for a loss. One of the things I worry about with some of my traders that are new and having success is many times we can get cocky and we see that success come and we're like getting it. And then we're like, oh, I don't have to look at the chart anymore. I just know that this is going to do this. That's exactly when you'll lose. So I want you guys to be ready with some money on the side in a savings account, especially if you leave your job, because there might be some times where funds get low in your trading account and you're going to need a side, like something on the side.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Would you have any other recommendations just for someone who's, let's say, rather new to trading? What's some good places for them to start learning about this?
Trade and travel. I'm not saying that just because it's my course. Like, we literally just had our thousandth student join the $1,000 in a day club. Like, they are literally paying off hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. They are retiring their parents. Like, they're buying houses, renovating houses with their trading money. So I think the trade and travel course is a great place to start. You can go to the website investwithteri.com if you're ready to get it now, but we have a free webinar at itradeandtravel.com. Definitely check that out. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, actually, one question I did want to ask you, and I probably forgot, but I'm going to bring it up now. When you started trading and traveling, you're at this point in your life, how has it really changed you? And not necessarily spiritually, but just how has it changed your outlook on life? just that you have so much freedom now?
Man, I wish I had done it so much earlier. Like, I look at some of my friends now and I realize that because they've never taken such a big leap of faith, they're a bit stuck. And they're stuck by just what they can see. And in the Bible, it does say like faith is the evidence of things not seen, right? It's the substance of things not seen, right? And I think a lot of times when you are in a job, all of your decisions are based on what you can see. Okay, I've only seen people that work in a company, so I can't be an entrepreneur. I've only seen people that make 6 figures, so that's the max that I'll be able to make. Like everything is really limited by what we can see for ourselves. But when I took that leap of faith to go overseas and trade, nobody in my family trades, then that just opened up my mind to, oh my gosh, like there are people out here that are doing crazy, wild things. And it just blew my mind.
Yeah, I don't blame you for any of that. Yeah, that is huge. Like, just to still see your story, I'm like, wow, she is out there doing it. And I'm imagining, do some of your students kind of follow the same path as you, like they start to travel a lot more?
Yes. So we have several students. I have one student that just moved to Mexico. So she's living abroad now and trading. I have another student. She's been trading, but she's even doing better now. I think, was it last year or not? COVID was last year, but the year before she had gone to like 10 countries trading. So they're definitely start following my footsteps. I've had 3 that quit their jobs and are trading full time. Probably more now, but yes, they're killing it. They're just killing it. I'm so proud of all of them.
No, that's awesome. And we do want to make sure we didn't forget this question. What were the best trading simulators? I think we mentioned one, but wasn't sure if you mentioned any others.
Sure. So TradeStation has one. If you deposit $500 into their account, then you can have access to their simulator. And that might change soon. So I really do that before the end of February, like open your TradeStation account and it'll say in there, how did you hear about us? Put Teri Ijeoma. Because I know with my students, they give us that deal, but I think that might be changing soon. So that's why I'm saying do that soon, do that now. But there's also a couple others. Trading View is another simulator, and it's kind of linked to TradeStation, but Trading View. And then Rapunzel, Rapunzl, that's an app, but it lets you trade with $10,000 of paper money. So those are some good ones.
And doing these simulators, this is just a good area for people to practice. Not necessarily you can't get hurt, but you can test out your strategies just to see if you're able to actually do this.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Oh, I know that makes perfect sense.
Take away some of the fear too. I have a lot of students that they learn everything, but they're just scared to take that first step. So do it with the paper money, get the jitters out, and then you'll be ready to go.
And when it comes to FOMO, because I would imagine if I'm trading on paper and like just today, the stock market had to reach almost another high going back to August. How do you teach your students to stay away from FOMO, stay away from all the noise?
Charts. That's where charts become helpful. Like if you're really disciplined to follow the strategy, then you got to wait to do what the chart says. And the chart says near highs is where you're selling, not buying. So that's like, it's really comes down to discipline and following the trade and travel strategy.
Understood. And I'm always curious about this as well, Troy, but do you have any big trips you plan up for this year? I know we're still dealing with COVID situation, but each time I talk to you, I have to say, where are you located now? Because I never know what she's going to be. So now I can just keep tabs on you.
I'm pretty sure you thought I was in Dallas today. And I'm like, yeah, I just got to Miami. I think my next one will be Puerto Rico. I just a lot of people lately have been going to Puerto Rico for tax benefits because if you live there 6 months, then you don't have to pay capital gains tax. So as a trader, I'm like, oh yeah, I need that in my life. So I feel like at some point this year, I'll probably be in Puerto Rico.
Oh, that's crazy. I did not know that. So just make sure I understand. We're talking about if I live in Puerto Rico for 6 months, I'll be able to trade on the NASDAQ, no capital gains.
So that's what, I'm not a CPA, but that's what one of these sections is supposedly saying in the tax code. Apparently that's why like Grant Cardone and all these people live in Puerto Rico.
I'm doing a lot of research on that because that is just mind blowing. Because usually capital gains, that's a lot of money right there.
That's huge, right? That's huge. But then you gotta, I feel like everything has pros and cons, right? Like, I don't know how their other taxes are for state tax and other things. Texas has no state tax, but we definitely have tax on capital gains. So you just, do your own research for yourself. But yeah, check that out, Andre.
Yeah.
I heard about that too and was like, who is about to get an apartment in Puerto Rico?
Yo, I hear that. And, speaking of taxes, I'm always afraid of the IRS. I feel, like those are one of those people that just sneak up on you. How do you handle your taxes when it comes to, selling stocks? Are you keeping track of it yourself? Do you wait until the end of the year when they send you that little report?
Yeah, I wait until I get the report, but all year we're planning tax strategy. So whether that's, checking to see, do I need to buy a multi-unit house or apartment building? I've been thinking about that lately. Like, okay, what apartment complexes am I getting this year? Because it's got to happen for tax purposes. Or is it, hey, like being more strategic? There was a point in the year last year where I said, I don't need any more wins. So maybe I can slow down on my trading because like it won't help me to have more wins. But on the flip side, there's times where it's like, make as much money as you can. Because who cares? If you're paying 30% of $100,000, you still made $100,000. Like, are you going to like not trade or not make money because you're afraid of paying a little bit of it to taxes? Like some stuff just doesn't make sense for the amount of fear that we give it. Like I get passionate about this because everyone wants to ask, but what about the taxes? Do you tell your boss you don't want a bonus because you're going to have to pay taxes on it? No. Do you like forego a raise because you're going to have to pay taxes? No. So then why would you not want to make trading money because you have to pay taxes?
Big facts. Yeah, I know me personally, I just make sure I just save a percentage. I save half. Worst case scenario, tax time comes, I'm happily surprised. So keep it like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
All right, so we got 2 other questions here. You guys keep those questions coming. Loving these questions. Do the charts tell when the big banks are buying and selling?
Yes, they do. That's the formations that I'm looking for in candlesticks. And then we have some criteria around that.
And can we go behind the psychology of this? So like, what does it mean when the big banks are buying and selling? Like, are we just assuming they just kind of know something that we don't know, or just following the movements?
Great question. So big banks, think about Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs just reported earnings, and they reported that they made like billions of dollars from their trading department. And it's literally because they are buying and selling stocks all day, every day. And so you think about, okay, well, what led them to their gains? Like, yes, they have, but they're supposed to be under 2 different sides of the house. They have a department of analysts that are figuring out what companies should be valued, right? So there's like an analyst team, but then there's a trading team, and those teams are not supposed to talk. So the trading team is making trades to buy stocks at a certain price and sell stocks at a certain price. And they're called the market movers. Like they make the markets move. They're big orders. But just imagine if somebody were to come into, let's just pick a stock. Let's pick Amazon for just fun's sake. Say that Goldman Sachs was to buy 1 million shares of Amazon at $3,300. Well, that very next day, because of those 1 million shares, it's going to pop up to $3,500 or something. Right. It would just pop up because of so many orders to buy. And at the same time, if they had a big order, like 1 million shares to sell, it's going to move the market too. Like this is actually why there was such a big issue with the whole GameStop situation, because hedge funds have the money to have those big orders. So what Reddit was complaining about is, you have these big companies coming in with these orders to sell the stock, and it's pushing the price down. So that's why they were saying, okay, to retaliate, we're going to go against it and try to push it up and make them pay for it. But it's this idea that when you have a lot of orders come in at the same price, they are moving the market. That's what we mean when we say the banks are buying and the banks are selling. You're able to tell where those big orders are coming in and going out.
And when you say they're moving the markets, this is pretty much the simple philosophy of buying and demand, supply and demand.
Yes, supply and demand. Yep, it's basically like an auction. If you have a stock or anything, a piece of art, and a lot of people want it, they can bid the price up. If you have something that's selling at an auction and nobody wants it, or there's a lot of sellers, they can bid the price down. Or what they're going to do is they're going to keep coming lower until they can find somebody willing to buy it at a lower price. That's what's happening in the stock markets. It literally is a market of buyers and sellers.
Understood. And we're going to break this question down into 3 different parts. How has financial success impacted you? Yeah, go ahead.
For me, finances bring dignity is something my mom told me recently. And I think that is so true. So I told you guys I retired my mom. And one of the things that I did was I gave her and my parents, my stepdad and my dad, some money so that they could go to the doctor. So that they, if anything was ailing them, they could get that taken care of. And what was crazy is before that, and I hadn't realized it, but before that, my stepdad had gone to get a procedure, an MRI, and they told him, well, your insurance doesn't cover this. You got to pay for it up front. And he had been waiting for this appointment forever, but he got there and he didn't have the money to pay for it. So he had to go home. And he was just like so distraught because one, he was embarrassed that he didn't have the money in front of all these people and had to walk out. And then he'd been waiting for it so long and he needed it. So now you got to reschedule an appointment. And I was like, never again will that happen to one of my parents. So I told you I gave this money to my parents and my mom uses it. So she goes to the dentist and they tell her, like, you have 4 teeth that need to get worked on. Each one is $2,500 a tooth. And they're looking at her like, you definitely can't afford this. So we'll just do 1 tooth and you can have the other one stay in pain, because teeth hurt. Yeah. So you just stay in pain because we know you can only afford to get that 1 tooth done. And she was like, no, I would like to get all of them done. And she said they looked at her in shock. And then then they were like, well, the numbing cream and the shots are going to cost another $500 per tooth. And they're like really egging her on, like, you can't afford this. And so then they tell her, well, do you want to be all the way asleep or just get the shot? Because if you go all the way asleep, it's going to cost an additional amount, all these things. And so she tells them, no, I would like to be asleep for the procedure. I'd like to get all 4 of the teeth done. And then when she calls me later, she's just so ecstatic because she said, you know what, Teri? Yes, money can't buy you happiness, but it sure can buy you dignity. She was able to sit in that chair with this lady and have her head high and say, no, I can afford this. Go ahead and let me get all the work I need done. And so I think that for me is how money has changed me. It's one, helped me to change my family's life, which is cool. And then 2, it has given me dignity. Like there's been small things that like I just wouldn't have done in the past. Like lately, this sounds so small, but it's like it made my day. I like to travel. Usually I get the cheapest rental car on the lot. Like whatever's the cheapest, get that for me. Today, I walked out, I looked at all the cars, and Enterprise had this section that was like exotic car collection. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want that one. and it's only $140 extra. But the fact that I could do that, like that just made my day. Like I can afford to upgrade to something nice that I really want versus just having to stay in the bare minimum. So that's how it's changed me, I think. I'm still frugal at heart. Like I will never buy something that's not on clearance. If it's on, like if I have the chance, I'm probably going to go to the sales rack. But like the ability to get something I like, that's been really nice. And
I definitely like how you mentioned you're able to help other people as well. And, you can always help me as well, buy me a house or something. We'll talk about it later.
Got it. Okay. You could just come visit me in Puerto Rico. I'm just saying, like, just come visit.
You know what? I'm still afraid of flying, but I'll gladly get on planes still. I still get on planes.
Okay. I was like, well, I guess you're going to have to take a cruise. Sounds to me like you're going to have to take a boat.
I mean, I don't sound bad now. I don't sound bad. All right, so we got about 10 more minutes left here, guys. So make sure you get your questions in. So just going to continue this one. Also asking any lessons learned, any lessons specific to being a Black woman.
Yes, I think one thing is never give, and this is like a business thing, but never give someone a percentage of your business. One of the things that I've realized is in the very beginning, I was working with a friend and I was like, we'll just split this 50-50. And I'm so glad that it was in the beginning that this happened, because this would have been a costly lesson down the road. But we split it 50-50. And I realized I actually got the short end because I gave him 50%, but then I had to pay the expenses and I had to keep teaching the program. And there were all these other things that came along with that. So one lesson I've learned is whenever you have contractors or someone that works with you, pay them a flat fee. Don't do a percentage because it doesn't really make sense to do a percentage. And that's come up again lately. And I'm like, you know what? You learned that before. So stick with it. Flat fees are better. Other things I've learned as a Black woman is know your value. Never come down on your value. And I think I was at a conference last weekend and Maya Eloise said this so nice. She said, it's not that the person doesn't have the money. It's that they just can't afford you right now. They still need to maybe save up to be able to afford what you're offering. But it's not that you need to come down because they don't have the money. And I think that's really important, especially for Black women, because many times we want to save the world and we just assume that people don't have money. And that's not true. People have a lot of money. People spend money on what they want to. So we need to know our value and what value we bring to the table.
Oh, excellent. And being that you do a lot of traveling, being that this is a Wealth Noir Woke Sabbatical Summit, do you have any tips, like any of your favorite tips when it comes to traveling?
Favorite tips. Download a VPN before you leave if you're going overseas. That way you can still watch Netflix and they don't really know where you are. That's important. Like I've wanted to watch my favorite show and it's like your show is not available here. But with a VPN, you can watch anything anywhere.
That's a good tip now.
There we go. Another thing is make sure that you get multiple credit cards and that they have points, because points come in so handy when you're like running on your last dollar. You can use those credit card points to pay for the hotel or pay for whatever it is. So make sure all your point stuff are set up. And then I do think just a fun one, make sure that you connect with friends in different places when you're going. Like be intentional to let them know you're coming. Even if you can't meet up with them, at least say hi, because it's been really refreshing some of the times that I've just like met up with a friend for coffee in a different location. And it's like, I'm just really grateful that we were intentional to have these conversations. So I think that's important.
Awesome. And then the last of my questions before we take some other questions here from the audience, if you could go back in time, I mean, we're talking about when you're the assistant principal, would you have changed any way you went about it? Like, would you change anything or just keep it all the same? You're happy where you are?
I think the cookie cutter answer would be like, no, I don't want to change anything because it led me to where I am now. That ain't my answer. I think I wish that was my answer. I think that if I could have done things differently, I think a couple things. I think one, I would have stood up for myself. Like I'm not always good in the moment with like, if I have something to say, like, some people have that smart mouth, that like quick comeback. I'm the one that has to go think about it, say it to myself in the mirror a couple times, and then I can come back and have like something really great to say. So, so I wish that there was some times I had stuck up for myself during that period of being like working. Yeah. I think that there were some times where I probably could have had a better experience if I had just maybe moved a little differently. But then at the same time, I know that all of the stuff that happened to me was a God thing. Like he had to move me out of that job so that I would trade and travel and that people would be impacted now by what I'm teaching. Like had I stayed at the school, there's literally thousands of people. Like the course now has like over 5,000 students in it. Thousands of people that wouldn't have learned how to trade if I had stayed at the school. Right. So also step into that challenge would be probably another thing. I knew in October that God said I could trade and travel, but I waited all year going back and forth on that. I wrote journal entries about it. I talked to friends about it. I asked colleagues and mentors, and it was like, God said, go, just do it. and so I wish that I had kind of listened a little earlier too.
Okay, I can go for that one. So guys, I hope you take some really good notes from this one. I mean, Chelsea definitely knows what she's talking about. And I would really encourage you to really dive into this stuff. So if you're interested, dive on in. Don't wait for it. And for this one, we're going to wrap it up. Teri, would you mind letting people know where they can find you? And would you mind letting them know anything that you want to share with them about the course?
Sure. So check us out. That free webinar on how to make $1,000 in a day is at itradeandtravel.com. itradeandtravel.com. That's the first best place to go because you can really see my teaching style and my trading style. And then after that, find us on all social media platforms at Trade and Travel. So we have a YouTube channel at Trade and Travel, Instagram. And then you can always look up my name, Teri Ijeoma, as well on Instagram. But check us out at that itradeandtravel.com. That's definitely first step.
Awesome. Well, Teri, thank you so much for coming in on here. I know you're a very busy lady. Thank you so much. And we'll be sure to check in with you later on and see where you're next.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Andre. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.